I know we normally cover cars on this channel, but these racing boats are absolutely insane. So what happens when you take a 10,000 horsepower V8 engine from a top fuel dragster and put it in a boat? Well, you get this, a top fuel drag boat, and they are just as extreme as their on-land equivalent. These boats have up to 20,000 horsepower, reach speeds well over 200 miles an hour, and can accelerate way faster than pretty much any car. We're going to walk you through this crazy sport and show you just how easily it can all go wrong. So let's show you that engine. They are 8.2 litre Hemi-based engines and are tuned to such a high power output that they have to replace almost all the internal components after each run. The engines get through nearly 100 litres of fuel per run. That's twice the capacity of a normal road car, and they get through it in about 5 seconds. But the fuel is very different to normal gasoline. It's called nitromethane, and it's pretty special stuff. It contains over 7 times the chemical energy of regular petrol and requires less oxygen to burn. The chemical makeup of the fuel actually contains oxygen, which is released as it burns, allowing for ridiculous power. But despite this, they use one of the most enormous superchargers that consumes over 800 horsepower on its own. But what's crazy is that all of this air plus all of the fuel means that the engines are on the verge of hydrolocking. This is where there is so much fuel in the cylinders that the pistons can't compress the mixture, and when this goes wrong, it goes spectacularly wrong. All of this means that drag engines can reach 330 miles an hour in 3.6 seconds on land and over 260 miles an hour in 3.5 seconds on water, accelerating faster than fighter jets and beating almost any machine over a 1,000 foot distance. Now, it must be said that these sorts of horsepower numbers aren't that unusual in boats, except that the boats look like this and the engines look like this. So it's really the power to weight that is absolutely insane in these drag boats. So what happens when you put one of these spectacular engines into a boat? Well, there is a class that does just that, called top fuel drag boats. And all of this horsepower is needed, as the drag when running along a lake is much higher than a smooth drag strip. And you can see that these engines blast the water high into the air. The racing looks absolutely crazy. The boats skim across the water, bouncing all over the place. These drivers are absolutely a different breed. Now, it must be said that the engine designers face some real issues when trying to apply that sort of power to the water. You will see that the boats don't actually start from stationary. They use a very slight moving start. This is because when you apply such immense torque to the propellers at the start, the drivers can't be sure which direction the boat will take off in. This is because the rudder doesn't work when stationary, and the sudden impulse of power can lift the boat up and make the launch very unpredictable. And so they use this slight rolling start to help them get a safer and more reliable start. Now, for a long time, the boats used a single propeller, and as the horsepower of the engines crept up and up, this became a real issue. As you can imagine, when you apply 10,000 horsepower and 10,000 newton meters of torque to the water begins to fight back. The sheer power can flip the boat entirely due to the resulting force of the water. This can be solved by carefully applying the power and adding rudder input, but this can limit overall times, so they came up with a better solution. It's called the W drive, and it's where the boats use 2 propellers that run in opposite directions. This means that the twisting force of the boat is cancelled out by the other propeller, and this makes the launch much more predictable. It means there is less drag from larger rudder inputs, and the designers can run even more power. There have even been examples of people running 2 of these top fuel engines. One of the main obstacles in the way of reaching even higher speeds is the drag. As you can imagine, the drag from the water below the boat is significant, but this is why they use something called planing. This is where they appear to skim across the surface of the water. Planing is used instead of buoyancy to keep the boat above the water. Buoyancy requires much more of the boat to be in the water, and so the drag is much higher. So at the start, you will see the boats rise up above the surface and begin planing. This is achieved by having a specially shaped hull. It forces the water downwards when travelling at speed, causing a resultant force to hold the boat up. It's the same principle as skimming a stone. Whilst a stone can't float with buoyancy, when at sufficient speed and at the correct angle, it forces water downwards, and this action supports the stone. This means that very little of the boat is actually in the water producing drag, allowing them to reach insane speeds. But this does rely on a good smooth surface on the water. The races are normally held on large lakes or bay areas, so that the water is as smooth as it possibly can be, but even this can be unpredictable. Watch this. Dan Rogers gets a very good start, but about halfway down the run he hits a small bump in the water. This starts a chain reaction that he simply couldn't stop. The result is that the boat hit the water at well over 150 miles an hour, smashing the boat to pieces, but thankfully the pilot was okay. And that was thanks to this very clever safety device. Look at this here. This is a survival cell. It's very similar to what we see in Formula 1 or other drag racing disciplines. It's a very strong carbon fibre turbo that can break away from the rest of the boat in an accident. And this means that it can dissipate the energy and keep the drivers safe. It also ensures that they don't sink with the boat and can be rescued. Something that is definitely needed when you have over 10,000 horsepower. We talk much more about the Dragster engines and the incredible tyres in this video here. You should definitely watch it. Thanks very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the Drive 61 channel and I will catch you in the next one.